Capitalism tends to break down repeatedly, almost as regularly as clockwork. I mean, we know about, the Great Depression of the 1930s. You had a financial crisis on Wall Street in 1792 before there even was a stock exchange. There was a speculative binge and a collapse. You can mark 1819, 1837, 1857, 1873, 1894, 1907, 1929, and then we're more familiar with the collapses of the 70s and the mess that we're in at the moment. Most people don't really know how profoundly sine curvy the American economy has been over the last several hundred years. But even those who do are much less aware that, particularly in New York City, every time there was a collapse into, crisis time, there were movements of opposition and resistance to simply rolling with the punches and letting the free market work its will until things somehow or another magically improve. The most specific thing that people in New York City struggle for is the provision of public works. In a crisis in 1807, 1808, in fact, they demanded public works, but unemployed sailors in particular, and they were hired on building City Hall. In 1857, when German socialists led a march to Wall Street, camped out in Wall Street and demanded the rich people pay attention to how people were starving in the streets, one of the responses was a massive hiring program to build Central Park. You can look at this kind of history of things down to the 1930s, when arguably the roots of the New Deal start in Union Square, where there are massive demonstrations led by communists, by socialists, by labor unions, demanding that the city and then the state and then finally the federal government intervene in this crisis of capitalism. Some of them want to replace capitalism. Others say, well, at least let's fix up the mortality rate that it's causing. And the end result of that is the program of social good provisions that we know as the New Deal. When we look at Occupy Wall Street, we tend not to remember that it is the latest in a long chain of Depression-era resistances. I actually gave a talk to the OWS people, and I laid out this history of their predecessors, and none of them had any idea about this. If they had a model in their head, it was what was happening in Egypt. And they thought, wow, we're part of a movement, and we didn't even know it. But partly that's the way these things work. They're sort of, cultural capillaries carry on over generations, over centuries.